ring if you're ready to care. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only WETOODEEP. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping me, yes, slapping me.
And what is good, everybody? Welcome back to the Slappin' Meat Community Show. I am your host, WETOODEEP, and we are back with more conversation regarding the world of professional wrestling and the NFL, and what a show we have for you. Just a little preview. We'll, as we always do, break down the week of the NFL, what we had going. We got one game left in the season, and we will talk about the two games we had this weekend. In wrestling, Royal Rumble, live from Saudi Arabia, is this Saturday, 2 p.m. start time on the East Coast. It's 11 a.m. on the West Coast. Figure out your time zone if you're in a different one, because I'm not good at time zones. And we have a whole bunch more other than that. A lot of wrestling conversation to talk about as well. But before we dig in to that, we started a new segment at the request of Discord member B-Master. Now remember, if you join the Discord, you have the ability to submit questions, to submit segment ideas that you maybe would like to hear more. I'm very open. This is a community show. This is 100% a community show in terms of what goes on. Now, my opinions and everything like that, that's me. But the concepts, the questions, certain segments, you guys can create this in essentially your own image with me, being very open to give as much creativity or as little creativity, depending on the community, right? Typically, you tune into a NFL show or a football podcast or a wrestling podcast, and typically it's very structured. It's, the same thing, no matter, the difference are maybe the opinions, but for the most part, a lot of the shows are run the same way, and there's not really a lot of community influence on the show, and I want it to be different here, where this is a community show. That's why, I changed the name of the podcast from the Slapping Me Wrestling podcast to the Slapping Me Community Show, because I've always wanted to make this, at some point, a place where I can give my opinion, but also a place where genuinely I want to build a community of like-minded individuals who enjoy being entertained by whether it's wrestling or football, and to create a place for them to turn away from the rest of maybe the world for an hour, 2 hours, and to just have their little space, right? And so that's what I hope this is, right? And so that segment is called Top 5 of the Week, or what I used to call it, like the Deep 5, and right? And essentially, he was like, hey, just do top 5, whatever, and pick a topic, right? Well, I told him at the end of last week, this week's top 5 is going to be, the topic is women that I would go to war for. Who are my 5 women in the WWE that I would go to war for? And I need to sort of explain what I define go to war for as, right? Like, what does that idea mean? So the whole idea sort of stems, now, of course, it's metaphorical. It's sort of like fantasy booking. It's sort of the idea of, if this person was mine, right, I would die for this person, right? And for whatever reason, right? And typically, in this context, it's since in the context that I'm speaking is, this person is so, bad, and whatever you consider a baddie, right? This person is so bad that if she was mine, I would go to war to win her loyalty, to win her heart, to win her love, whatever it is, right? And so, what 5 women in the WWE would I go to war for? And that's what we got here now. Just like last week, not in any particular order. We'll start with number 1. These were just in the names, or the order in which I sort of thought of their name. Right? So number 1, Lyra Valkyria. Y'all had to know she would be on the list, right? Lyra Valkyria, I would go to war for her, right? She just feels like someone who is loyal, someone who, she obviously doesn't have a high taste in men. If you looked at her fiance, no shame, I'm not like face shaming or whatever. Not everyone is, going to be, top level attractive. But obviously she's something more in him than 100%. Lyra Valkyria could end the relationship with her current fiance today, and there will probably be 10 or 15 guys in the WWE locker room who are single who would date her immediately. She could find someone so much better, 100%, right? But she seems loyal. She's not the most attractive person on the roster. She's not the most, attractive person on this list. That's not what I go to war for. I go to war more for the personality and just the, to me, that she seems the most like wifey material to me. So 100%, I would put her on the list. Now, the rest of the list, we could sort of maybe forget about that, right? Especially this one, right? The next one is Jada Parker. Now, we already knew these two. I put these in the Discord, right? But Jada Parker. Now, there may be some of you who are like, but we too deep. You said a couple weeks ago that Jada Parker's sort of overrated. And I'm not stepping back from that. But remember what I said. I said her gimmick, that I didn't understand what her gimmick was and how it, and even still to me, she's sort of that, I still don't know what her gimmick is. I know she's loved by the fans, and she's good on the mic, and she's decent in the ring, and she has a look, and Booker T's, I think, definitely going to get her over with his reaction in a similar way that he did the Trick and Stephanie Vaquer, right? When she does the high step, he sells that, right? And so I think that's going to be useful. To me, when I see Jada Parker as the gimmick, as the character, right, I don't know where she fits on even the NXT roster right now. Obviously, she's in like a main event picture. She's in the thing with Blake Monroe right now, which I think is just transitionary. While either what will happen is Blake will become champion or Jada will become champion, and I think maybe that feud extends down the line. Who knows? I'm not really sure, but I think this is, a transitionary feud to get her back on TV. From a gimmick perspective, I think she's a little bit overrated. But we're not judging this. We're not ranking these. We're not picking these based on gimmick. We're basing it on the person, their personality, their I think there's a little bit of the looks that play into this. 100%. Jada Parker has, if I were to build, like, based on my preferences, she's up there, right? She might be the prototype what WETOODEEP likes, right? From a, I don't know how to say this without it coming off wrong, but from a complexion standpoint, right? Y'all know me, right? I have different types, right? So I have different types for different for the different shades of skin, right? For example, for white girls, right? Typically, like, Lyra's like the exception of the rule. But if Lyra was blonde, 100% more attractive to me, right? Y'all know for white girls, I go for the blonde ones, right? But I typically am not looking, I'm going to be honest with you, prefer, like, there's a preference in me now where, like, Latinas, light-skinned African-American, and even something like a Bianca skin complexion. There's another person on the list I'm thinking of that's a little bit darker of a skin complexion, but I don't want to give her name away because she's on the list. Like, even there, like, I'm like that, I would probably say those are my preferences, right? But even when it goes into, like, physical outside of that, y'all know I've said this before on the show. To me, I'm a cue the Billy Gunn. I'm an ass man. Dun dun. Yes, I'm an ass man. Dun dun. And Jada is definitely more more junk in the trunk than on the chest. And that's fine with me. Y'all know my stance on this. Anything more than a handful is too much. And that varies depending on your hand size, right? So that varies for each person, right? I don't make the rules. That's just what I believe, right? But anyway, like, Jada is like, she's checking off boxes, right? And I do feel, though, Jada would be in the war with me if I was fighting for her hand, right? That like you used to have to sometimes in certain cultures have to go to war with, right? And if you were like a warrior, you would fight for your queen's honor or whatever. Like, that's sort of what this is, right? Would I go to war for Jada? Absolutely, every day of. Give me the torch. Who we fighting? We ride at dawn, right? Third on the list is Sol Ruka. And I'm going to be honest with you, it was really hard to get this down to 5. This position, like, the last 3 I really battled with so many different names. But Sol Ruka definitely fit. She might be my favorite woman on the roster. Y'all know I like athletic women. I will say this. I talked about checklists with Jada, right? Jada has this thing for me, and maybe it's just the way she looks in her wrestling gear. Because she looks a little bit different out of her wrestling gear than in her wrestling gear to me, right? But Jada has this, she has a dump truck, right? She got a big booty, and we're not shaming. We like those around here. Like, what's No Life? I don't know if y'all know the reactor, No Life Shaq. But I used to listen to him all the time, watch all of his reactions, and he has a saying, "We like those." Yeah, we like those around here, right? But I prefer more tone. Like Jada has flabby. Like Jada's is flabby, probably a little bit more, or but not as toned. Let's just say it that way. Same thing with like a Lola Vice, right? It's flabby and it's fat, but it's literally fat, right? Whereas Sol Ruka has a toned booty, right? And that's what I prefer, like more muscular. So Sol Ruka would probably actually be the prototype, like WETOODEEP woman, right? Because she's tall, like that body build that she has in any other skin tone would be probably hella attractive on every skin. I don't try to make this about skin tone because I'm an equal opportunity lover here, but yeah. So Sol Ruka, 100%. She could snatch my soul whenever she wants. I would go to war for her 100. Who's the ops? Who we fighting? When am I meeting them there? Right. Number 4 on the list is Jade Cargill. 100%, right? And this, she's a little bit different than everyone else on the list, right? Because she's tall, toned, beautiful. She's the other one I was talking about with the darker complexion that I find absolutely just beautiful, right? Gorgeous, right? But she's almost what we would call like a glamazon or an Amazon, right? She's a little bit muscular. A lot of people say that muscles don't look good on women, and I would highly disagree in certain standpoint. Like so, go back to when, I don't know if you guys were following Jordynne Grace when she was cutting for, or no, I think she was, I don't know, but I think she was bulking, actually, if I remember. She was bulking to become she was doing a bodybuilder competition. And this was back when she was on the indies, and she was bulking like crazy. Shredded. She looked good, right? In terms of, you could tell there was dedication. You could tell that she wasn't like ugly by any chance, but I just think bodybuilders in general just aren't my thing. I think there is a limit, men or women, of too much muscle, or right? But Jordynne Grace now is fine, right? Just, she's a little bit shorter, like, for me. Like, I prefer, like, the tall, lean, ripped, like, even like Sol Ruka. Sol Ruka shredded, right? But, like, tall, leaner, shredded, that's like my preference, right? 100% Jade Cargill's on the list. And then number 5, again, it's really hard. This could be anyone. This could be Liv Morgan. This could be Bianca Belair. This could be Tatum Paxley. And all of them have things that are different and make them unique. But ultimately, I settled on Rhea Ripley. And I know I had a thing probably, most of last year where I was sort of hating on Rhea. And a lot of that was more of hating on her booking, because she was well overpressed, well overpushed. And I get it. She's probably the best women's wrestler on the planet. In terms of just, if I'm looking for the prototype women's wrestler, maybe Rhea is the one. But from a go to war standpoint, like, Rhea Ripley just 100% would 100% grab the sword, and we going to protect her honor. 'Cause she's definitely, like, now there were hatreds, like, I 100% am not the biggest fan of the tattoos all over the place. 100%, right? And the black aesthetic, the goth aesthetic, the way she presents it, with especially in the ring, not my thing. But her outside of the ring, her just in normal life, her, she's a beautiful woman. But then I also think of like personality. She seems like a chill, laid back person, someone that I would, vibe with. And so all of that, 100%, I would go to war for Rhea Ripley. And like I said, there's probably 20 other names I could put on this list. But there's the top 5. So with that, we will go in the ropes. We have a whole bunch to talk about. We got Royal Rumble predictions. We'll save that for the end of this segment. Let's start with something that sort of broke news, not necessarily all that important. And that's the Trey Miguel drama that sort of happened. So we all know the Rascals signed with AEW. Something happened where Trey Miguel wasn't on TV and ended up getting he put out a message saying he was taking a break from wrestling. After that message comes out, he gets released from his AEW contract. People sit and wonder why it is. And then this past Thursday, was it this past Thursday? Yeah, this past Thursday, excuse me, on Impact, live on AMC, he shows up on TNA. And so, if you watch most wrestling programs, they probably have an opinion on this and have talked about it. And here's my official position. I really don't care. Why am I talking about this? Because what I want to talk about is the craziness of potentially being released for a conversation that you and what you said 5 years ago that you've already apologized for. When I don't know. I just don't necessarily like that type of culture. If that's what goes on in AEW, I think that's reminiscent of why I'm not the biggest fan of the Marks, the Sickos, that company. It amazes me that something that was said almost 6 years ago at this point can come back and bite you in the ass and get you fired. Like, especially after you apologized for it, I don't know. I just think it's a little bit insane, especially when you consider some of the people, on your roster and what they've done in their past, right? Mark Briscoe was seen, he used to wear the Confederate flag as part of his gimmick. No one's going to cry about that, is it? Right? Now, I wouldn't cry about it. If it's part of their gimmick, it's part of their gimmick. I don't see an issue with them playing a character. I don't know. I think this type of craziness is just that. It's crazy, right? I don't genuinely care anything much about Trey Miguel, what he wrestles, what he does. I'm not necessarily a fan of his. I think he does some crazy stuff in the ring. He's uber talented, but just not my style of wrestling, right? Then the second thing that sort of just made me go, why are the Sickos this way, is Marty Scurll posted a photo on Instagram. Now, I'm not on Instagram, but I saw all the talk about it on X. That Marty Scurll posted a picture on IG with Hangman Page. And just everyone lost their mind that Hangman Page would hang out with someone who he used to be in a faction with and was friends with. Like, And it all stems from the 2020 Me Too wrestling BS that got Enzo not arrested, but Enzo fired, and a whole bunch of people, essentially almost plenty lost their careers in 2020 with everyone was locked inside and had nothing better else to do with their life, so they tried to get people canceled, apparently. So anyway, now I don't know necessarily the whole case about what happened with Marty Scurll, but here's my thing. They're obviously friends. Like I'm sure that's a difficult relationship to have and to navigate, and I don't think that should be severed based on allegations that I don't even think to this day have been proven correct or not. I don't know the full situation. And again, this is obviously one of those things I really just don't care about, but I wanted to mention it more so on the aspect of the IWC is absolutely crazy. The IWC is absolutely crazy with this whole idea. The next thing I want to talk about when it comes to wrestling is I asked myself this question the other day. And the question was, can we just go back? And I asked myself this question because I was watching a video from WWE's Facebook page. I was scrolling through Reels on Facebook. And a video popped up of old Bloodline, Jey Uso promo with Sami Zayn, where it was the promo where Sami's like, I'm just trying to get peace. The tribal chief just wants peace. And Jay responds, well, I don't give a damn what the tribal chief thinks. Right? In one of the greater promos. And I'm just sitting there watching it. And I asked myself this question. Can we just go back? Why can't we go back to this level of peak content? Right? You'll see a credit when I get to the hot take heat check. This is one of the things I'm going to refer to. Is I don't know what happened in the creative room when all of a sudden the plans to take the belt off Roman happened, and they sort of killed their money making. They killed what was bringing back the audience, which was the Bloodline, which was heel Roman, which was all of the craziness and the drama. And obviously you want that to end at some point because you can't push that story out forever. I just was sitting there, though, watching that and watching it live, which I haven't watched an episode of Raw or SmackDown live as it was airing since the transition to ESPN. So when they transferred PLEs to ESPN, so that in and of itself was remembering that, but also just like remembering how the response to that story, to that peakness of where I thought wrestling was potentially at an area where if we continued in that level of quality entertainment, like there was a reason, just think back 3-4 years ago, we were sitting here talking about, just remember, I started this podcast, Money in the Bank, 2020, it would be 4 years this year, so 2022, 2023, yeah, 2023. July of 2023, I started this podcast, right? And throughout what will end up being 4 years on July 1st, throughout those 4 years, I have made so many episodes. If you go back to 2023, 2024, like that, I was building this podcast, early episodes in the peakness of this story. And there have been many episodes where I've said, this is the greatest WWE story of all time. And I'll still stand by that comment. But when you go back and you watch it, and then you compare it to where you're watching now, part of me just wants to go back. Like, we had a formula, and it felt good, and it worked, and there was interest in the product. And I just feel that there have been a lot of things booking-wise, things corporate policy-wise. I think Vince McMahon selling as well is one of the things that have sort of destroyed the product, in my opinion. And so the question is, can we go back? But more so, is the booking team capable of getting us back and creating something on the level of what the Bloodline story was? That was my favorite thing. Like, I would tune in and put up with 5 hours of Raw and SmackDown a week just to see the Bloodline, just to see the story as it played out. And it was a time to remember in the wrestling world. And I told you, and I predicted this, that as soon as they took the belt off of Roman, everything would dissipate in WWE. He was the sort of thread that held the company together, and they took the belt off of him, and he ended up missing 5 months on a vacation. But he would do that every year anyway, right? But when he was the champion, right, and he was the tribal chief, and he was the guy that everyone was building for, there was always something at stake. Now, so Roman lost the belt after Cody beat him. He disappeared, and we knew he would return, but there was nothing that he was really returning for. He came in tagged with Cody, and again, it's one of the things that are blatantly obvious, that Triple H was handed diamonds, and he just had to sort of play his hand with that. But when it came to where he actually had to be creative with it, I don't think he's meet that mark, right? I just don't think he's handled it the way it should have been, right? And then before we get to Royal Rumble predictions, one more thing. There's a video going around from Saturday night's main event this past Saturday, which I still haven't watched yet. And I don't know if I'm going to watch it, to be honest with you. But there's a video going around on social media of a fan sort of heckling, and I would even put the label harassing Roxanne Perez, and she sort of snapped at him, kind of broke character. And then you see a security guard sort of telling him to sit down. And I saw that today from a account that's more casual. We'll probably label them a little bit more casual wrestling fan, more, and I wouldn't even say casual, but because they have Sasha Banks or Mercedes Moné as their profile picture. But they're more of I would call them the nostalgic wrestling fan. They want to go back to the Attitude Era, and that's just what they want. And they're a little bit more, what I would say red-pilled. I don't know their political stances, but they definitely come off like, oh, this generation's so soft type posts that they do, right? And so I saw this video, and his response essentially to it was just that: this generation's soft. You guys claim to want the Attitude Era, but you're soft. And guess what? I actually agree with that sentiment. genuinely this fan base is not ready for the Attitude Era, and they should stop asking for it back. Which brings me to another rant I'll cover that right now, just briefly, just rabbit trail. There's like 30 different editions of WWE 2K26. Like, we have the King of Kings edition with Triple H on the cover. You have the Monday Night Wars edition. You have the Attitude Era edition. I still haven't even seen the regular general edition of the game and what its cover is going to be. Anyway. But back to this. My response to him and what I would say here is he's actually wrong, because his response was something like, this man spent his hard-earned money. He can do whatever he wants. And my response to that is no. Generally, I would probably be in agreement with 75, 80, 90% of what this guy would say. Or guy or girl. I don't know what it is. I don't want to misgender, right? But I'm assuming it's a guy, though, that's behind this account. And I would probably generally be in agreement with 75, 80, 90% of what they say. I'm in disagreement with this take, though, because that is not how reality works, right? And right. So here's how reality works. There's the idea known as the social compact, and the social compact essentially says, let's actually just define. Let's define social compact. Define social compact. All right. So putting this in chat GTP, so sorry for that. So the social compact is the unspoken agreement between individuals and a group of society where people accept certain rules, norms, or limits in exchange for benefits like safety, order, enjoyment, or participation. Key parts of a social compact. It's implicit, not written. You're rarely signing anything, but expectations still exist. It's mutual. Everyone gives up something to gain something else. And it's context-based. The compact changes depending on where you are. Examples: driving. You stop at red lights so you don't die, and neither does anyone else. At school, you follow rules so that learning can happen, right? You have that social compact at a school where the students are understanding that they have to respect the environment of education, right? And so you don't act out. You can't do whatever you want to do at school, right? You get in trouble for it, or you're supposed to, right? Sporting events, right? You cheer, you boo, you have fun, but you're not allowed to harass players or disrupt the event, right? So that's what I mean when I say that there's a social compact when you are attending ticketed events. In fact, there's actually fine print. So you're actually agreeing to this. What you're essentially saying is that by making the transaction of paying for the ticket, what you're agreeing to implicitly is I will agree and follow all of not only the organization running that, so not only WWE's rules, and right, but also the stadium's rules, right? Sometimes there are rules that the stadium has that WWE doesn't have that you still have to follow, even if WWE doesn't have the rules, right? So by paying for a event, for example, if I wanted to go to SmackDown on the 6th of February, if I wanted to go to SmackDown that day and attend that event and all of that, I could not, or technically, if I wanted to go to that, by me paying to buy that ticket, I am agreeing to whatever WWE's rules are and whatever Spectrum Center's rules are. By clicking purchase ticket, I'm agreeing to that. Whether or not, I'm not signing a contract, right? But by me making the transaction, I'm recognizing there's a way you behave in public, and I am agreeing to abide by those rules. What this person said, now it wasn't anything like super bad. He was saying that she was flopping, which is a stupid thing to just say to anyone like, it's not that deep. As a I don't think it necessarily was bad what he said, but you don't get free reign to curse, because he started cursing at her like, "Oh, you're fucking flopping," right? You don't get the ability to disrupt the enjoyment of the event of anyone else, of the children, you don't get to cuss out a performer, right? Especially like leaning over the ledge like he was. I don't think it was necessarily behavior that it's acceptable just to represent yourself in public, right? Like, I wouldn't ever, and this isn't like, oh, Roxanne's pretty, so you can't ever say anything to her. She's a heel, you can definitely boo her. And that's even what I said. Like, technically, if I was WWE, I would sort of enforce a rule. You boo for the heels, you cheer for the faces, and if you try to disrupt that element of our creative, we can have you removed. If I was a promoter, I would do that 100%. Hey, you're not supposed to like this person. If you're cheering for them in the middle of the match and you're starting chants that we don't want to, like, I kick them. Like, I think within the realm of their creative ability as a TV show, they have the right to remove you for that, if that's their rules, right? I don't think there's anything wrong in saying this person should have just behaved like a normal human being, and at no point is it okay to harass a wrestler. And I don't think that's being soft. That's recognizing the social the social compact that exists in reality, right? You have to, right? When you're driving, you don't have to follow the laws, but you do for your safety and the safety of everyone else. Everyone just sort of assumes that, right? And so that's just how it is, right? Oftentimes you do it because you don't want to get in trouble, right? So there's a speed limit, so you abide by the speed limit rules, and because you don't want the ticket, right? You don't want the fine, you don't want the potential jail time for reckless driving, right? Anyway, let's talk about Royal Rumble. Now, I'm reacting to this blind. I haven't watched Raw or Smack. I've watched one episode of SmackDown in full in the last 6 months. And that was just here recently. I'll be honest with you. I might look at the prices. I might go to the SmackDown in Charlotte. I don't know. We'll think about it. We got to take a look at the prices. And where we're sitting. Because I've sat at the very top of this arena, and it's not a very enjoyable experience. I could watch it from home, but we shall see. We shall see indeed. Especially since this is going to be the first SmackDown post Royal Rumble, I'm interested. I'll just say that. Again, we'll take a look on Game Time or something like that. We'll see what the prices are. These prices are ridiculous. But anyway, we'll see. But my whole point is Royal Rumble predictions. I'm not really certain of the storylines. So my predictions we're just guessing at this point. So we'll talk, as of now, we have 4 matches. We have AJ Styles versus Gunther in if AJ Styles loses, he has to retire match. You have Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre for the championship. And then you have the 2 Rumble matches. So let's talk about Gunther AJ Styles first. I think this outcome is pretty simple. Gunther's winning for 2 reasons. One, Shinsuke kind of spoiled it. And not only Shinsuke. And what I mean by Shinsuke spoiled it, apparently he posted a story where he recalled being on the last Japan tour, and AJ Styles telling him that he was retiring at Rumble. But also we have like dirt sheets out there saying his contract ends at the end of January, beginning of February, and that essentially Rumble's his last event. And so maybe, but also I think the major issue with, so AJ Styles is definitely going to lose, and he's probably going to get choked out. But the reason I'm also going with that, more so storyline-wise, if we just forget about the spoilers and the dirt sheets and all of the marks in the industry ruining everything, just from a storyline perspective, everything Gunther's built since retiring Goldberg, retiring Cena, is I'm retiring the old guys, right? And so it just makes sense for him to retire AJ Styles, and then I think you build it towards the SummerSlam or the WrestleMania match. Ultimately, I think Gunther may get a WrestleMania match with, I don't know, like a Chris Jericho. Who knows? I think that would be interesting for Jericho to show up at Rumble. Maybe the feud is I get one more run till Mania, and Jericho retires at WrestleMania, being put out by Gunther, or something like that, right? Which then leads to maybe essentially him retiring Brock at SummerSlam. And I think that's the plan for Gunther through SummerSlam, potentially. The Jericho thing being the biggest potential of not happening, right? But I think AJ Styles and I think Brock Lesnar's pretty certain that that's the plan for Gunther, is to retire those guys, and right? I don't know what his Mania plan is. I don't know what they do with that. We shall see. But yeah, Gunther's winning this match 100%, which then takes us to Drew versus Sami. Now, this is just me thinking. There are 2 possible stories that can happen on and how they could book this. The first one is they're in Saudi, right? He has the number 1 contendership, which he won in his hometown. They're now in Saudi, which is essentially his second hometown, right? As far as the fan reaction would go. They give him the belt on Saturday, get the response, maybe have him hold the title through Mania, or maybe he loses it, a quick, short Mania run, similar to like a Jey Uso run, and then you move on from it. Because this is really like the last thing Sami Zayn has left to offer before he probably ends up retiring. And so that could be what they do, but I think that's too short-sighted. I think they're thinking long-term, and I think this because Triple H loves long-term stories. You got to hear me out. Triple H had a bit of a play in the booking of the last super babyface we had before Cody was Daniel Bryan, right? And Sammy and Daniel Bryan are sort of like similar in appeal. They're super over indie darlings who came up through the ROH ranks and probably where no one's ever saw them as world champion. I mean, if you sent Triple H out to cut a promo on Sami Zayn and said, you're a B-plus player, but you're not an A-plus, right? And retell the Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30 storyline, you would 100% convince me that this, you could replicate that story, that's what this is. And so I think that's what they play. And I think the play is he's in front of what essentially is the greatest home field advantage he has in Saudi. Everyone cheering for him. He loses to Drew, doesn't win the title, and you go on a year storyline because this is the template Triple H loves to copy and paste, where he has to face all these demons and these troubles and this hardship. But where's Mania next year? Where's Mania in 2027? Mania 2027 is also in Saudi Arabia, and that is where I believe Sami Zayn wins the championship in Saudi Arabia. 100%. I think that's where he wins it, in Saudi at WrestleMania 44, 2027. And so I think we got a year long of Sami being sort of a major player in the main title picture, but never really reaching the mark. I think we could even have him in the Money in the Bank match, possibly in a spot where he's about to win the briefcase, but maybe he gets pushed down off the ladder at the last second and gets, and he doesn't get it. The next person that climbs up wins it. And I think we're going to get a lot of sappy Sami Zayn promos about, I just need this title before I retire, blah, right? I think Sami Zayn's about to be one of the major players on TV. 100% believe that. And so I'm going with the second, what I just explained, that Sami's going to win the title at Mania in Saudi next year. And so I'm going to say Drew McIntyre either wins or there's like a DQ or some false finish where. But ultimately, I think it's going to be, I lost in Saudi the first time, at this Royal Rumble, and now I got to get redemption, right? And that's going to be essentially the story. So then we get to the two the two Rumble matches. And these two Rumble matches, typically it's pretty easy to predict who's going to win these Rumble matches. But Triple H has done a decent job, and I don't know if it's just him being a genius or there's just me not watching and paying attention. But I'm not quite certain I know who's going to win. I had an idea when they announced it in Saudi that Sami would win it, but Sami's in the world title match. I don't think Sami's going to be in the Rumble as well. That could be a third story, by the way. Sami and Drew opens the card. Sami loses in Saudi. He then ends the card in the Rumble match where he wins the Rumble. That could be a story. I just don't think it's all that likely, but it could be the story, right? And then he goes into Mania, wins the title this year. That could be the story, but I think the longer term, win it Mania and Saudi, I think that's the bigger play, just personally. But anyway, we'll start with the Women's Rumble. And this one's the hardest one to predict because I have zero clue what's going on right now in the women's division on Raw or SmackDown. But here's the thing. I don't think the winner is coming from the current active roster. As far as like surprises, I think maybe we could see an AJ Lee show up. I don't know if they'll do any surprises with the women. To be honest, I think they're just going to have... This is going to be a lot to coordinate. It's the most women ever on a card in a single match in Saudi Arabia, from my understanding. So there's a lot of coordinating. I don't think they'll try to get off fancy. I 100% believe the winner of this match, this is what just makes sense to me based on who the current champions are, I think the winner of this match is going to be a returning Bianca Belair. I think Bianca returns, and she wins, and she finishes the story with Jade Cargill. That just screams to me to be the story heading into this Mania. I just genuinely don't know who else could win at this point. Charlotte and Alexa are tagged in the tag team picture. Charlotte doesn't seem to be, anywhere close to, fighting. But she could always win it again. But I just highly doubt we go that route for a second year in a row. Of course, Tiffany could always come back and win it. But I highly doubt that happens. I'm leaning towards Bianca as the surprise victory return. Get the victory, right? As far as, I guess, surprises, I think we'll get possibly a call-up or two. Possibly like a Sol Ruka. I don't know. To be honest with you, I just don't. This one's difficult because I personally don't believe AJ Lee is going to be there. Just personally, I don't think she's going to allow herself to go over there. I could be wrong. Wasn't Punk over there last time they went for Crown Jewel against Cena, wasn't it? So maybe Punk just did it for Cena. I don't foresee Punk being in Saudi this time either. I just don't think they have any interest of being there. But I just maybe a Sol Ruka shows up. I've heard things like Tatum Paxley or something along those lines, but I personally think that there's enough women on the main roster right now that you don't need anyone else as like a surprise if you're not going to keep them there and use them to their full extent. The one person I may consider potentially being there that we're not talking about, I don't remember her name, but there's a female Muslim wrestler. She had a match in House of Glory Wrestling against Mercedes Moné. I can't remember her name, but she's the first ever woman to compete in like a hijab and like full burqa hijab like gear, and she just had a WWE contract or WWE tryout, and it would not surprise me if they signed her or said, hey, do you want to do this event? And even if it's a one-off, I highly doubt it'll happen, but it wouldn't surprise me. Again, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm going with Bianca. And then with the men, y'all aren't going to like my prediction. I'll say this. My original prediction was Sammy. Then it changed to, I heard rumors it was going to be Roman versus Cody. So I was going to say Roman was going to win it. But I'm actually off of that now. And I'm going to go with someone that I've given a lot of shit to here over the last few years. I'm going to go, and I think it's finally going to happen. They're finally going to give him his moment. I don't know if he wins the title, but I think they're finally going to give him his moment. And I'm going to pick LA Knight to win the Royal Rumble. I think LA Knight's winning. And I think he's going to go face CM Punk. Because Drew's going to be preoccupied. Whether it's Oba who debuts and maybe attacks Drew, because that's what I'm thinking is going to happen in the Sammy Drew match, is Oba attacks Drew McIntyre, costing Sammy the title, right? Which could lead to a Sammy versus Oba feud, ultimately with Oba going over and then going to McIntyre possibly at at Mania or down the line. I could see a potential of Cody versus Drew happening again. I don't think that happens. Cody's one of those people. Like, I don't know where Cody fits in the storyline right now. I just don't see anyone winning against, anyone winning who will face Drew at Mania. I think the play is CM Punk's opponent, and I think LA Knight is the one. Who it's going to be. I know a lot of people think it's going to be like a Braun Breaker. I just think that's too obvious. And I think Braun has... I don't know. The Vision whole storyline is kind of boring to me at this point, to be honest with you. And I don't even watch the show, so I don't even know what's going on. But it just doesn't feel... Like, without Seth, it doesn't feel relevant, to just be honest to you, to be the main event. Braun, I'll say this. Braun Breaker has lost a lot of what I had in him when he first debuted. He had like a spark to me. But what happened I think what it was he was so unique. But then someone came out, and what that someone is Obafemi, who I think is better in the ring, better on the mic, better at gimmick work. And Braun, where Braun is really missing me with, is the gimmick work. He's not really a gimmick. And they focus too much on the fact that he could run the ropes 23 miles an hour. And he sort of feels like a marketing pitch. Right? And it just doesn't feel... I'll just be honest, I lost a lot of my view of Braun as the top dog in the Wolf Dogs with Baron Corbin, where I felt like, okay, he could be a great mid-carder potential tag team. Like, he's up there. He's good. But I even think with Braun, like, he had to be carried by Dolph Ziggler in his career in NXT. He had to be carried by Baron Corbin, in my opinion. Then they turned him heel, and I just don't think it really works all that well. Then you put him with Seth, and he's being overlooked. I think Bronson Reed is better than him, just personally. So I know he's supposed to be portrayed as like the big dog in the group, but I just think Bronson Reed is better. I think even in a way, Austin Theory has a little bit more aura. Braun's just, I'm sort of off of Braun at the moment. And so, I mean, he could always win it, but I'm leaning towards the surprise pick of LA Knight. As far as surprise entrances in this match, I think Chris Jericho's almost certain. I'm pretty certain it'll happen. I think possibly we could see Powerhouse Hobbs, or whatever they're going to call him. Royce Keys is, I think, the name they chose for him. I think, if I remember it correctly, I don't really care about names. I don't know if they'll debut him, though, at the Rumble. I think he'll more so show up in NXT at some point. Possibly in this number one contenders stuff, right? I can't think of any free agent off the top of my head right now that could show up. So yeah, LA Knight wins, Bianca Belair wins. Drew is going to keep the title, whether it's a win or a DQ. And then Gunther's going to retire AJ Styles. So that's my Royal Rumble predictions. So with that, let us then now go forth and deep. And before we jump in to cover the NFL, the conference title games, before we cover that, I have to talk about something in college football real quick that is just absolutely crazy. And I don't know how many of the people who listen here follow college football. But we have a situation with the transfer portal and all of this that I think is it's downright despicable, right? And it's making me actually consider my take. So I don't think this is really necessarily an NIL problem, but it's making me consider my take on NIL. Because initially I was one of the bigger proponents of, several years ago, I've always sort of been one of the bigger proponents of, paying the players is the best thing for the players. And I wasn't quite sure how that would work. I think in my mind, I just felt possibly revenue share, which I think is fine. But the idea of like NILs and the boosters paying players and signing contracts and having agents, and now it's not regulated, it always was going to lead to exactly what is happening in the Clemson Ole Miss debacle. So let me tell you the story. There was a linebacker, Luke, I don't know how to say his last name, Farelli, I think is how it's pronounced, who played at Cal Berkeley, University of Cal, the Golden Bears. He was a linebacker there. Really good linebacker, right? Dominant. I think he had like 116 tackles or something last year. And he entered the portal when the portal opened, and was going to transfer from Cal. And he signed with Clemson. And, Clemson's been using the portal like crazy in this offseason, right? We essentially revamped the entire defense, right? I'm a Clemson fan, right? And so, now, I need y'all to understand this has zero bias, right? Because I'm typically a fan of the idea of the transfer portal. I'm going to tell you why I'm rethinking my mindset on this, because of this story. So anyway, Luke Farelli signs with Clemson. He goes on a visit with Ole Miss. Initially, he then the next day goes in to Clemson, meets Coach Dabo, Sweeney, and then the next day visits the campus, right? The day he visits the campus, he has his agent with him, and they sign the contract for him to transfer to, or they verbally agree upon the terms for him to come play for Clemson, whatever that money NIL stuff looked like, right? So then Luke Farelli, his dad, I don't know if the rest of his family's there, but I do know his dad was there. They fly back to California. They get home. They sign the contract, send it in. He signs the contract, but not only that, he enrolls in the school, signs his financial aid waiver. I don't know if you guys have gone through the college admission process. It's extensive. There's a lot of forms that even non-athletes have to sign in terms of financial aid and housing and all of that. He doesn't necessarily need housing on campus, but he ends up signing all of the forms to get into classes, enrolls in the school. A few days later, he's back in Clemson. He got an apartment. He bought a car. He is in classes, right? Enrolled for spring semester in classes at Clemson, right? Already taking classes. And so, as the story is told, as Dabo has submitted over to the NCAA, Luke Farrelly is still being contacted by the head coach of Ole Miss. I don't know his name. I think it's Paul Golding or something like that. I don't know his name. The new head coach, right? He's just been there for a few weeks. Like, Lane Kiffin signed with LSU like a month ago, right? And he took over, right? Anyway, so this head coach has been trying to contact him. Allegedly, from how it's being described in the official documents and the official story Dabo's telling, is the player Luke is in his 8 a.m. class when he receives a text message from the coach asking what the buyout will be to get out of the Clemson deal, with a picture of a contract worth $1 million. So the player goes and reports it to the coaches and says he has no desire to leave Clemson to go to Ole Miss. Dabo then finds out about this through, assistant coaches or whatever, and says, well, who is the, AD or GM or whatever of Ole Miss? And the guy, whoever he's talking to, says he knows them. He'll get in contact. And Dabo says, we'll get in contact with them and tells them that we're going to give them grace this first time, but we want them to stop all further communication with our player. He's not in the portal. And so, but in any further communication, we will report you. So, right? So, it gets reported that head coach of Ole Miss doubles the offer. Says, hey, we'll give you $2 million to come to Ole Miss. And this gets, sent through us. And the player, Luke, ends up taking this deal. Dabo Sweeney, as he tells the story, essentially gets a call from someone in the athletic department essentially saying, hey, that guy Luke you just signed? Well, he's down at one of the offices. I don't remember what Dabo called it, trying to re-enter the portal. Now, that language is important. Re-enter the portal. He wasn't in the portal. He had signed, right, with Clemson, which then took his eligibility in the portal out of the portal. He was not a athlete in the transfer portal. He had to go back and redesignate himself in the portal, right? And so in order to do, right, so what that means is any communication with the player or any communication with a player not in the transfer portal is considered tampering, right? And so Dabo Sweeney, bro, he's going to tear the entire structure down. And typically, and as a fan of Clemson, I have been uber against Dabo's stance on NIL and the transfer portal, and I'm officially on Dabo Sweeney's side. Right? I'm officially on Dabo Sweeney's side. First off, you're never going to get rid of it. You've already allowed it to happen. I don't think you'll ever get rid of the system, but Dabo can burn the system down for all I care. Dabo Sweeney laid down the law this past week, where he essentially said in a press conference, if you tamper with one of my players, I'm turning you in. And I know there's some people who are like, oh, Dabo snitching. No. You got to do this the right way. There's a right way to do this, right? And until there's consequences, as Dabo said, until there's consequences for these actions, then, if we're not going to have consequences, then we don't actually have a system that's fair, right? There needs to be some sort of regulation. And I agree with Dabo on this regulation. You transfer, you enter the portal, you have to sit out a year. Right? You don't lose a year of eligibility, but you essentially are taking a red shirt. And if you've already been redshirted, but he gives exceptions, right? He gives exceptions to sitting out. The first is if you're a graduate student, right? So you graduate from Clemson, you want to enter the portal, you have 1 year left of eligibility, you could transfer. That's fine. You don't have any years after that, right? Or if you, right? And I really think that's the only exception that's accessible here, right? That's okay. Like I'm a graduate student, and I'm not getting playing time at Clemson. I want to go somewhere else. I think that's fine, right? But you enter the portal, right? You have to take a redshirt year, and sit out a year. You don't lose a year of eligibility. You just take a redshirt year, and then you play the next year. What this will cause is less people to enter the portal, right? Because a lot of people aren't going to want to sit out for a year. Or we need something. And this goes back to a question of we have to go back. We could continue that into this. We have to go back. I still think players should have some sort of revenue share for, items that, with their names or whatever on it through licensed products. But I think the idea of universities, and I was even like the idea of NIL when it first started was they could go and sell their name, image, and likeness and like represent companies. And I was all for that, where they can make money in commercials or by selling merchandise. What it's turned into, because it's unregulated, is essentially what booster club can raise the most money and pay the most. And that's what it's essentially turned into. It's turned into semi-pro football, right? I mean, the fact that players now have agents should mean that they lose their amateur status. 100%. Right? Because it used to be if you declared for the draft and signed an agent, you foregoed all eligibility. I think we should put that back up. If you sign an agent, because all the agent's going to care about is the money. I'm 100% certain the Zaluk guy, whoever his agent is, pushed him to take the deal with Ole Miss. And so, yeah, this whole story's crazy. It's absolutely unacceptable. And Dabo laid out beautiful call to action because he says, I've received so many text messages and calls and voicemails and emails of other coaches who are saying, this has happened to us. And Dabo said, he laid out this call of action. He said, you guys either turn them in and fix the system, enforce the rules, turn them in, or stop complaining about it happening. Don't ever call me again complaining about, people tampering with your players if you're not going to turn them in, is essentially what he said. And I loved every word of Dabo's press conference. I typically think Dabo has been on the wrong end of the transfer portal conversation. But I think history will recognize that Dabo Swinney's correct. And how he handled the transfer portal in NIL. I think Dabo Swinney's going to end up on the winning side of this conversation. But with that, let's talk about the conference championship games in the NFL. Mainly meaning we got to go to Patriots Corner. We'll talk real quick briefly about the Rams-Seahawks. I didn't watch a lot of the game. The Seahawks won. Congratulations to them. I mainly want to talk about the Patriots and the Broncos in this game. So let's talk about what happened in this game. What happened was situational football, right? So many people I've received and seen so many things. Well, the Patriots didn't even play good yesterday. And here's the thing, guess what? As a Patriots fan, 100% agree. Our offense was atrocious, but it didn't have to be good. We just had to get 10 points. That's all we needed, right? We needed 10 points because that's how we won. We won with 10 points, and we played defense, which, again, tells me, I've said this how many times, like 4 weeks in a row now, I feel like the Patriots have a team who has a defense that could win them a championship, and as long as the offense plays somewhat competently, doesn't even have to be good football. It just has to be middle of the road competent. Right? I think the Patriots have a team that could win because of their defense. Defense in the playoffs is what wins you championships. 100% believe that. 100% of the time, I believe that. Now, sometimes you have a good defense, but you also have an offense, right? I don't ever think there's ever been a Super Bowl winning team that has won mainly because of the offense. I think maybe you could say the Patriots beating the Falcons was like an offensive comeback, but ultimately you needed a defense to keep the Falcons out of scoring more points so the offense can do what it could do. I would argue the one Super Bowl that was sort of offensive in nature, Patriots-Eagles, was, I think both teams had over 500 yards of offense, that combined like 1,100 yards of offense combined in that game, I believe, something around there. That was an offensive showdown, but I think it ultimately, what won the Eagles the game, it was the strip sack by Brandon Graham, that image, that forsaken image that I can't get out of my head seeing in that game, right? And so the defense won the game for him, right? And so were the Patriots the better team against the Broncos? Absolutely not. Without a doubt, no way. But everyone wants to say that the Patriots got lucky or... No. The Broncos lost the game the second Sean Payton decided to go for it on fourth down instead of sending the kicker out in perfect conditions. Right? This was first quarter or early second. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I believe it was first quarter. It was like fourth and short, and you were within field goal range. And this has happened multiple times in the playoffs, and I've complained about it while watching it every single time. I don't understand the game planning nowadays with NFL coaches going for fourth downs more often instead of taking the 3 points. And it's been explained to me by a couple people that it's an offensive league. 7 points is better than 3. And my argument's always the same, but 3 is better than 0 because a lot of the time you end up with 0. And so I don't understand the concept of missing out on 3 points. I love the game plan. Back when we played the Texans and they were doing an interview with someone and they said the game plan is simple. End every possession with a kick. Extra point, field goal, or punt. Every possession needs to end with a kick. And I don't understand the idea of going for it on fourth. Call me old school, call me traditional. I just don't get it. If Sean Payton kicks the field goal instead of goes for it, They go up 10-0, and genuinely, I believe the Broncos win the game. 100%. Believe the Broncos win that game. But football is a game of strategy, right? So many people I've heard complain about Drake May had less than 100 yards passing. And I said, here's what it is, right? I've had to explain this several times today. What you saw was a war. And sometimes in war, the best trained army doesn't always win. But the army with the best sergeant calling the plays, and sometimes they win. And I think ultimately what you had was a better strategy. The Patriots took a 10-7 lead going into halftime. You come out, I don't know if they knew snow was coming or whatnot, but you come out of the tunnel, it's snowing in the second half, and the Patriots' game plan was essentially keep away. I think they held the ball in the third quarter for 13 minutes of the 15, right? It was keep away. It was run the ball. And live in person, I was getting mad. Can we stop running the football? They know we're running. Throw the football, right? But the more I contemplate this, the more I understand their game plan now. It was keep away. Run the ball. Run the clock. They're not moving the ball either because our defense is doing a great job. We don't have to always score points. We have the lead. Just play keep away. Chew as much clock as you can, and let's do that, right? And that's exactly what we did. Was it a perfect game by Drake May? By no means. I think it was actually his worst game of the season, and he's had 3 of those this postseason, right? If we're being honest, Drake May has not played well in the playoffs. He hasn't. And so, but when it came down to it, and he had to make a play on the, I don't remember if it was 3rd or 4th down, and we ran the bootleg, and he got to the first down. He had to make that play, right? And he made the play. He did what he needed to do when he needed to do it. And so I'm immediately being told that the Seahawks are going to dominate us, that JSN is going to dominate us, and this was my answer to that, literally, when someone told me that earlier today. I said, we have a 2-part solution to the JSN problem. Because I'll admit, JSN is a problem. He's a very good wide receiver. Arguably top 5 already. I said, but we have if we're smart, well, we have a 2-part system to the JSN problem. I said the first is Gonzo will be blanketing him every single play that Gonzo's on the field. And I don't see Gonzo coming off the field. But Gonzo's a top 3 all-pro, Pro Bowl cornerback for a reason. Gonzo is legit, right? Now, Gonzo plays better in zone. So that kind of scares me a little bit. And Gonzo gave up a play, their touchdown, the Broncos' touchdown. Gonzo, because they were playing in zone, I think he was expecting Jalen Hawkins to be back there, and he wasn't. Gonzo gave up the touchdown, right? But that was like the worst play I've seen Gonzo play all year. So I think Christian Gonzalez will be on JSN the entire game. But there's a second part of this, and that is we have one of the hottest pass rushes in the NFL right now. We have we're healthy, like at the right moment on the defensive line. Right outside of Harold Landry, we're healthy. You got Caleb Vaughn, you have Milton Williams, Tonga, Christian Barmore. It's the middle of that line that's just absolutely destructive. which allows Caleb Vaughn to be good, which allows if Harold Landry's on the field to be good, which allows, all of that, right, to happen. And so I think that putting pressure, I think we're going to send pressure. If we're smart, we would send pressure early in the game and call Sam Darnold. We know when Sam Darnold it gets blitzed and gets blitzed a lot and he starts struggling, we know he sees ghost. We know that. Like, it's not like even last year in the Vikings when people blitzed him, he saw ghost, right? I think as good as the Seahawks team has been all year, I'm more worried about the running game, but again, I think our defense is good enough to stop it. I know everyone's talking about their cornerbacks, but how many times have the Patriots heard that this offseason about, like, I know Texans fans were like, oh, Stingley this, Stingley that, and look, Eamon Warry's good. Woolen or whatever his name is good. Woolen. They're good. They're a good team. I'm not going to take away from the Seahawks. I'm not going to be the over cocky, confident fan. They're a great team. I think a lot of people are already questioning like the Patriots and talking and hating and that's fine. Do that this week. Do that this week. Do that next week, leading up to the Super Bowl leading up to the Super Bowl on the 8th. I'm not making predictions for the Super Bowl this week. I'm going to do that next show, like leading up to it. Yeah, I think the Patriots played strategy, and that was the game. And so strategy wins, coaching wins. And so that's the game right there, right? Drake May doesn't have to play perfect, and because he has a defense that can cover him up, right? And then finally, we're going to do awards. Now, I had the idea of putting this in the Discord, seeing how many people would vote, and I didn't. I got me, Kara, and Witters voted on it, and so there wasn't genuinely a lot of. And I put these here for 3 days, so it's not like I didn't give people time to vote on these. But we'll talk about them, and I'll give my reasonings for what I would vote and why I would vote this way. And so we'll start with comeback player of the year, and the candidates are Stephon Diggs, Trevor Lawrence, Christian McCaffrey, Aiden Hutchinson, and Dak Prescott. Now, a lot of people are voting Trevor and saying Trevor is going to win this. If it was me voting, I'm picking Dak Prescott. And here's why. Dak Prescott had one of the secretest, best seasons I've ever. I think he finished third in passing this year. If we look at 2025 stats, he finished third in yards with 4,552 yards. That's third in passing. He had 7.6 yards per attempt, 67% completion percentage. 30 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. QB rating of 95. I mean, if we're looking at someone like Trevor, right? Trevor had QB rating of 91, had 2 more interceptions at 12, had 1 less touchdown at 29, had a completion percentage of 60.9, so about 6% worse on fewer passes, about 40 fewer passes, 7.2 average per attempt compared to Dak's 7.6, and ends up at just over 4,000 yards. So he's about 550 yards short of Dak Prescott in terms of yards. then you look at, so when it comes to the quarterbacks and comparing Trevor to Dak, I think Dak had the better season. Now, did he take him as far? No, but I don't really know the criteria. Is this, overall season and results, or is it just like statistics? Right. So Aiden Hutchinson was fantastic. But I don't think he wins it. I would pick Dak personally, right? And as much as I love Stephon Diggs, I don't know if he necessarily has a chance here. I would give it to Dak, 100%. Offensive Rookie of the Year, your 5 candidates are Jackson Dart, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, Teteroa McMillan, and Tyler Chuck, however the freak you pronounce his name. If it was me, I would give it to Travion Henderson. So Travion Henderson finished #20th in yards with 911, with the understanding that he was a split back, right? Him and Ramondre shared duty, right? He wasn't like a pure starter. 20th, 911 yards. Where's Ramondre on this list? Ramondre's right here with 603. But Ramondre had 130 carries. Travion had 180. They quite literally split like 55-45 the carries, right? How many touchdowns Travion had? Travion had 911 yards, 9 touchdowns. And then I don't think he had any fumbles that I can remember. He had one total fumble. That's pretty good for your rookie year stats. Again, it's the split back. Like, he's splitting time with Ramondre. And I think he was hurt. Well, Ramondre was hurt at one point. I don't think Travion played all that much the first, 4 weeks of the game. Or of the season, right? So, Ramondre was definitely RB1. And then he got hurt. You look at the other guys, I don't think Egbuka is in the running. Tet, maybe. I don't think it'll be McMillan. Ultimately, I think they're going to give it to Jackson Dart. I disagree with that big time. I would give it to Travion Henderson every single day of the year. Every single day of the year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, you have Abdul Carter, Nick Emenwari, James Pierce, Carson Schwessinger, and Xavier Watt. I think Schwessinger should win this. Again, if it was me. I think he was top 6. Yeah, top 6 in tackles, combined tackles, 157. 90 assisted, 58 solo. And that's as a rookie, top 6 in tackles. I think it has to be Schwessinger, without a doubt. Just that's just me, though, right? Offensive Player of the Year: Drake May, Puka Nacua, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. This comes into what happens with the MVP. Because I think Drake May is going to win Offensive Player of the Year. Because I don't think he's going to win MVP. Right? Now, I know JSN's been good. McCaffrey's been good. Bijan's been good. Puka's been good. But here's what I think happens. If JSN wins Player of the Year, part of me believes Drake May will win. Because I believe those are the 2 candidates. It's JSN or it's Drake, right? So part of me then believes if Drake doesn't win Offensive Player of the Year, he's going to win MVP. But the way that I see this happening, because I don't think they're going to pass up on Stafford getting one final award before. Like, this is probably going to be the last opportunity Stafford gets at an MVP. So I think, and let's just go ahead and cover MVP then. Yeah, let's just be honest. There's 5 candidates, but it's a 2-person race. I know Kara voted for Christian, and I get it. He played very good. He carried the team. I think we understand that this is really a 2-person race between Stafford and Drake. And I think they're going to give Matt Stafford the MVP. And because of that, they're going to give Drake May the Offensive Player of the Year award. I found it really funny that he was on this list as Offensive Player of the Year and on the MVP list, because and I immediately said, yeah, Stafford's going to win MVP. They'll give Drake the consolation of Offensive Player of the Year, right? Defensive Player of the Year, Michael Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, Nick Bonito, Will Anderson Jr., Myles Garrett. There's no question at all at who will win this and who deserves it. It's Myles Garrett. Broke the sack record. Just a dominant player on a really bad team. I think realistically, Myles Garrett should have been up for consideration for MVP. Because without Myles Garrett, the Browns win 0 games this year. Let's just be honest with you, right? Myles Garrett should, like if MVP really meant the most valuable player in the league, I would say Myles Garrett should be an MVP candidate. Just as me being honest. Coach of the Year is the last one. Liam Cohen from the Jags, Vrabel from the Patriots, Ben Johnson from the Bears, Mike McDonald, Seahawks, Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers. I think it's going to Vrabel. Solely because, now I don't know, is this a regular season award? Are they going to count playoffs? Are they going to count the fact that Vrabel got him to the Super Bowl? I don't know how the standards for that work. But I think, without a doubt, even with it just being regular season, I think Vrabel is going to win it. It's just incredible what the team has been able to do from 4-13 to 14-3. And I just want to put this out here. I'm going to put the clips in the episode next week, right? I want to put this out here, though. Go back and listen to when it was Slapping Me Gridiron, before I mixed wrestling and football together as one show. I did 3 episodes in a show called Slapping Me Gridiron. And it's on YouTube only because Slapping Me Gridiron was removed from streaming on audio. So YouTube only. Those episodes are still up. Go back and listen to the first ever episode where I predict the NFL season. And just listen to it, right? I'll put some clips from the episode in next week's episode when I talk about the Super Bowl. And how I did. Let's look at the season in review with some of my predictions, right? But with that, we got a few more things to cover. I'm going to start a new segment. Excuse me. I'm going to start a new segment not only on this show, but on Just Yappin' as well on Fridays, called Do You Agree With? And on Slapping Me Community Show, it's going to be wrestling or football-related statements. And then on Just Yappin', it could be practically any other conversation, right? So, 10 statements. Do I agree with them? Really, these are supposed to be like quick snap answers. We'll see how quick I can answer these. But we'll start with this. Do you agree with the following statement? In wrestling, championships or titles mean less when they change hands too much. Agreed, 100%. The more you flip-flop titles, the less the titles mean anything. There's something that stands for having long title reigns, right? Because once they flip-flop 1,000 times to 20 different people, now it starts to feel like a participation award and not a serious thing, right? Statement 2, do you agree with a great promo in wrestling is the same thing as a great quarterback press conference, that confidence means more than honesty? I disagree with this statement. Here's why. In wrestling, when I genuinely know that what I'm watching is pre-recorded, pre-staged, and by pre-recorded I mean pre-planned, staged entertainment, I think a little bit of the confidence, macho, bravado goes over well in that environment. As a football fan, I don't want my quarterback, on the press, doing a press conference and ignoring reality, right? Because with entertainment, you could stretch reality. You could form your own reality and storytelling, right? But when you're in reality, right, when you're actually in real life, and your quarterback's up there just completely disregarding the reality of the situation, but he's confident, right? Like I'd be perfectly fine if Drake May did press week next week and did a press conference and said, hey, we know this Seattle team is great. They have a great defense. We have to go out and play better, right? And if we play better, we will win the game, right? I think you can exude confidence while being honest. I don't think you have to forsake honesty as a quarterback or any player on a football team in real life. I don't think you have to forsake honesty to show confidence. I think you could do both, right? Statement 3. Do you agree with fans say they hate part-timers but secretly love them when they are actually stars? For example, Roman Reigns, or in football, someone like Aaron Rodgers. 100% agree. I will fully agree with this. They complain all the time about part-timers in wrestling, but the hottest merch sellers, the biggest cheers, the ticket sellers, right, are the part-timers in wrestling. I don't really necessarily know what a part-timer would be in football, but I can kind of see the Aaron Rodgers understanding, right? But 100% agree with this statement. Do you agree with a dominant heel run is more entertaining than a good babyface run? Agreed. Here's why. I feel like when you have a great heel, like imagine again Roman Reigns. When I go back to the "Can I Go Back" segment in the ropes with Roman Reigns, Bloodline, peak Bloodline, right? What made Roman Reigns and that story feel so good? There were stakes at every match that happened. There was some sort of stake that set up. There was, right? Sometimes it feels like, so remember like Daniel Bryan, right? You get the payoff, Jey Uso this year at Mania. You get the payoff. You get like the emotional reaction, but there's no stakes in a lot of those matches, right? At all. And so as someone who has come to love the art of being a heel, I will 100% agree. Heels are better than babyfaces. Next, do you agree with analytics are ruining football in the same way that smart booking is ruin or smart? I'm gonna change it to smart booking. Smart mark booking is ruining wrestling. Agreed. Smart mark booking is definitely ruining wrestling. I don't know what you would call Triple H's style of booking, but trying to outsmart the fan base to get the pop is not good. It's ruining WWE. Just to be honest with you. But also, analytics are killing football, right? Because it goes back to sort of what I was talking about with me hating coaches going for it on fourth down and short when they should kick the field goal. And they do that because the analytics tell them that 60 or whatever percent of the time you'll get it. Just take the 3 points. Stop worrying about analytics. I think the more we put computers and stats and nerdy stuff in the football, you take out what's important, and that's the strategy. Take the points and move on. The next statement is, do you agree a bad owner hurts a franchise more than a bad coach ever could? Just agreed. Just look at the Dallas Cowboys. That's all I got to say. Just look at the Dallas Cowboys. If Jerry Jones stepped away from the football team today and put someone else in charge of football operations, I guarantee you they will get better instantly. Next statement is, do you agree loyalty to a team or wrestler makes fans excuse behavior they'd roast anyone else for? 100% agree. I don't really have an explanation. I think it's self-explanatory. There are people who are loyal to their team that would, we see it all the time. I'm looking at you, Buffalo. Your fan base is absolutely crazy and annoying. And, there's behavior that any other fan base would do that you would roast anyone else for doing the same thing. 100% agree, right? Do you agree some fan bases don't actually want to win? They just want to complain online? Disagree. I disagree with this statement. Here's why. I believe fans want to win and complain. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Again, looking at you, Buffalo. Buffalo fans want to win football games, but I also think there's a part of them that secretly wants to complain about referees and everything else but the fact that their team isn't really good, right? I think that's just part of being a fan of sports or wrestling in general in 2026. People just want to complain. Next, do you agree with injuries are treated with more sympathy in the NFL than in wrestling, even though wrestlers are basically wrecking their bodies year-round? Yes, I think there's a view, and I think I've even been guilty of this, that wrestlers are carnies, they're junkies, they'll do whatever they want to get a pop, and so with that, when they get hurt, it's almost like who cares? But I also think this goes back to the argument of, I don't think you'll ever hear an argument of assumption of risk when an NFL player gets hurt. Like we hear all the time out of the AEW crowd when someone gets 37 centimeters away from breaking their neck. Oh, well, it's just the assumption of risk. Okay, well, Damar Hamlin should have assumed the risk, but when he almost died on the field. No one would ever say that, right? No, just the assumption of risk. No, right? No one would ever want what happened to Damar to ever happen, and it shouldn't have happened. There should have been some sort of protection or whatever. Just like in wrestling, you shouldn't do stupid stuff, right? I think we need to look at injuries in wrestling a little bit the same way we would with injury, right? Because what's football doing, right? Football's actively trying to find a way to get less injuries. Now, I think they're failing at it and ended up with more injuries. They're not willing. The NFL's not willing to take responsibility for more concussions because of the changing rules, or more leg injuries because we're trying to keep it away from the way people were trained to tackle. So now people are starting to tackle at the legs, and so there's more leg injuries. Pair that with the fact that the turf, it's awful for people's knees, and we should go back to regular grass. Or you're San Francisco, and you're right next to the nuclear power plant, and I guess that shreds everyone's knees and bones and ligaments because everyone's always injured on that team. But Who knows, right? And then finally, do you agree that intangibles is just a polite way of saying we don't know why this works, but it does? Or essentially, what the question's asking, do you believe that wrestling fans or football fans, saying that we don't know why this person's so good, he just has that it factor, right? Is that just a nice way of saying we don't understand things? And I'd agree with that, 100%. I'd agree. We only got one question from the Discord this week when I put out a request. So it's from B-Master. He said, with TNA debuting on AMC and it being a total flop, do you think the network would drop them, making them go back where they came from? So the first thing I will have to say is, how are we defining the word flop? Like, I think we have to be careful when we look at the ratings for a program like TNA and immediately coming to the conclusion that it's not good. Now, I will say, I did not watch the second episode. It's recorded. I just haven't found the nerve to want to push play yet, because I didn't necessarily enjoy the first episode. But I don't think it's a flop. Now, what's the rule that I always put into play, right? The first episode of any show debuting will always be the highest episode you'll probably get in viewership. And episode 2 will be about 50% of that, and you'll probably stay around. So episode 2's viewership is typically what you could imagine a normal week's episode to be. So we have the statistics. I can show you this. That, again, I'm kind of correct. So week 1 pulled in 173,000. These are confirmed stats, not the fake stats that were going around the IWC trying to call it a failure. Week 1 had 173,000 viewers average in ratings. Meaning that they almost doubled what they were getting on Access TV, which I would say was fantastic. But again, what's my rule? Week 1's your highest, divide it by 2, and you'll probably get your average viewership and what you can expect week 3 to be. Right? So 173,000 divided by 2 is 86,500. Well, how many did they get on week 2? 89,000 viewers. What were they averaging on Access? About 89,000 or so viewers, right? Right? And so, is it a flop? No. Absolutely, I don't think you can define this in any way possible that this is a flop. I think they need to address the creative, and I don't, right? But I also need to kind of wonder, what did AMC expect they were getting, right? Like, now, ultimately you want to get more viewership, right? But I don't know what we were expecting. I'd love to have that conversation with you, B-Master. Like, I don't know what you were expecting in terms of numbers. I don't think. Here's where the deal is good, right? The deal from AMC benefits TNA because it's money coming in. They weren't making money on Access TV because the company that owns TNA owned Access TV. So you were getting ad revenue, but you didn't have the TV deal money coming in. And so I think the deal is worth $30 million over the length of the contract. And that $30 million is going to be beneficial down the line when it comes to buying cameras and production. And if I'm TNA, here's what I'm doing. You have to differentiate yourself from looking like a independent show. I think you have to go all out as much as you can to make yourself look just as close to WWE as you can. Because I don't think you're going to get the fan. Like, again, I want to know what AMC is expecting. Are they happy with the numbers? I don't necessarily think they're bad. I don't think it's a flop. I think 2 weeks in to overreact and say they need to drop them off the network, I don't think that's the case. I think they're in a good position right now with this deal. They got $30 million deal that is going to benefit them in a lot of ways in the future. But also, I think there's a legitimate chance that AMC bought into it with the assumption that at some point down the line, WWE is going to buy the company. And as much flack as I give Junkyard James, right? As much flack as I give, I think he genuinely has a point here. They just have to wait for there's a certain amount of time you have to wait. So WWE just bought AAA, right? And there's a certain amount of time the FCC requires you, the government requires you to wait before you can buy other companies or merge with other companies, right? After you merge. So like they bought AAA, right? So now they have to wait a certain amount of time before they can buy TNA, right? And I ultimately think that's the end goal, for sure. But also, like, I don't necessarily know what else they don't really have any. I mean, you have The Walking Dead, but that's really about all AMC has. And so I don't necessarily know if people are necessarily interested in the people who would typically watch that channel. I don't think are necessarily interested in that programming. Again, I think 2 weeks is early to decide this anyway. But that's where I stand on that. Hasn't this been a fun 2 hours, y'all? I know I've had fun. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you're on audio, leave us a review. We would really appreciate that. And until the next episode, I'm WETOODEEP, and this has been the Slapping Meat Community Show. Oh, shoot. Almost forgot. The hot take. Heat check. And it's real simple. I actually posted it in the Discord before I recorded it and said I would give my explanation. That is, wrestling in the current era, which I will say started in 2025, where really all of Vince McMahon's leftovers finally were gone, were 2025, right? Because Roman had lost the title in 2024. So we can even really start that era there, right? But the current era of wrestling is the worst it's ever been. I don't really think I have to explain it. Don't really think it's a heat check or a hot take to say that to my audience. But I think if you said that to wrestling fans, they would complain and say, "Oh, but it's so good in AEW. You should just watch." No, AEW's bad as well. Nothing's entertaining. On the AEW side, and then on the WWE side, you have like NXT that's good, but all the main roster stuff that I kind of want to watch it, right? It's just behind a paywall that's just too much money to put into it for subpar product. So that's it. Now you can go. Thank you all for watching. It's been WETOODEEP. I'll see you on the next one.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. Whether it's NXT or NFL time, going in the ropes and fourth and deep. Slapping meat community every Tuesday. Help immunity up, every Tuesday.